You have returned to listening to Loathsome Things, a horror movie podcast where I, Josh, and he, John, talk about the horror movies that we watched over the prior 2 weeks. John, how are you?
Doing pretty well. Really excited about talking about this movie. Whatever that means, what I said there.
Yeah.
And, doing all right. The world sucks, but how are you doing, sir?
The world does suck, and that is pretty much my experience of it. Yeah, it blows chunks. Thankfully, we have horror movies to dive into instead of focusing on the horrific things going on outside of our houses.
Everything's horrible. Let's watch horrible stuff.
Yes. I am in the middle of watching all of the Halloween franchise in order.
Yes, I see that.
Yeah, it's been fun. I was not expecting to enjoy as many of the movies as much as I have.
I have intentionally avoided all of them except the David Gordon Green ones. And now I'm going to have to watch them. Because it's one of those things I was like, I'll watch them one day, but I just haven't gotten around to it. So, of course, I've seen 1, 2, and 3, and then skipped right over all that other shit and just went straight to the David Gordon Green, which the first one... No, I take that back. I did watch the Rob Zombie ones.
Yeah. Both of them?
But, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. First one, good. Second one...
I am halfway through. I had to stop watching the second one so that we could record, and I was just getting to the part where his mom is the snow queen in a shared dream space, and I was like, okay, we're getting real later era Rob Zombie feeling right here.
Yeah, he goes off the rails a little bit on that one, but the first one was good. I actually liked it.
Yeah,
I think it's one of his better movies, which, it's saying something compared to his good movies, and it's not saying much compared to everything else.
Yeah. It really helped me identify, the things that I really like about his movies. He does really good stuff, and he loves horror movies, and it's always good to see a movie by someone that loves horror movies. But then he's also, an embarrassing uncle type of dude, where it's oh, come on, no, you were, I could almost invite my friends over, but just not quite, because you're gonna pull out this box and show us the things in it. No.
Yeah, yes, he will invite your friends to the basement to smoke some weed, but then he'll probably want to show you 70s porn.
Yes! 70s porn that he has gone in with his horrible video software and put Sherry Moon Zombie into.
Into everything.
Yeah.
Pardon me, Mr. Zombie, but is every woman in this movie your wife?
It's just all deep fakes of her in every shot.
Oh my god. Oh, I wish I could do that. Just take one of his movies and just make every character Sherry Moon Zombie.
Oh my god, that would be so good. Or even just replace every character's face with Sherry Moon Zombie's ass. Because, he always has to get that in there, too.
He is proud of it. I mean, God bless him. He certainly loves his wife.
Yeah. She's gonna be a monster. What could go wrong?
Dude, have you seen the trailer to that movie?
I have specifically avoided it. I, first of all, never cared for the Munsters or the Addams family. And second of all, it's just what is he gonna do? He already has such a weird propensity for, just doing, horrible cliche jokes, in the first Halloween where the guy that's taking a shit says, what we're having here is a failure to communicate. I'm oh, come on, don't do that.
Please don't, but you did.
What is your experience of the Munsters trailer?
It's probably the worst, if not the second worst trailer I've ever seen. It's fucking atrocious. It's bad. It's bad in the, as Ramon says, it's the only thing it made him think of was Veronica. the Glenn Danzig movie, which is the worst fucking movie. It's not even fun bad. It's just bad.
It is so bad. And it's funny because he's a better Glenn Danzig. He's basically a upgraded Glenn Danzig.
He's probably a much kinder, more personable Glenn Danzig. To be fair, I do like Danzig's music throughout the years. I liked the Misfits. I liked Sam Hain. And I like his solo stuff. I've come around. But as goofy and macho as all of it has been, but him as a person, he's insufferable.
Yeah.
And Zombie is like, his music's terrible. I've always hated his music. Even the early White Zombie, which my friends liked, I didn't like. And but I've always liked his visual style. Mm-hmm. He's a great artist. He's a really good. He draws really well.
Yeah.
And he has great visual sense. And I guess he's a good showman. He's a good entertainer. But he's just so inconsistent when it comes to filmmaking. And I mean, God bless him, because he clearly just makes whatever the fuck he wants.
And that's great. Like, keep doing it, Rob.
Yeah. I mean, that in and of itself is pretty awesome. And really, nobody makes movies like him. They're so specifically his own thing, which can work for him and against him. But just goddamn, that trailer is terrible. It's like the worst part of the 90s with all the colored light bulbs, like bright green and bright red and purple and real cartoony. And but then there's this weird uncanny valley feeling where you're familiar with the monsters and they're fine as they are, kind of off in that world where I don't watch the monsters.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden here's this new version of this thing I didn't care about to begin with, and it's like, dude, what the fuck is this? Why? It's like, it kind of reminds me of Herman Munster, like Ed Gwynn, but something's just not right.
Yeah.
And it's just bad. It's like, I don't want to see it. Like, I don't, like, even Veronica, I saw the trailer, I was like, this is terrible.
Oh, yeah.
This is so bad, I'm watching it. And with this one, I was like, I could barely get through the trailer. It was that bad.
Yeah, that doesn't sound good. I don't need that.
I mean, I've always been wrong. I always say this, I'm really bad at predicting what's going to stick, but my personal impression is that this movie's going to be a total failure. But
it's very hard to tell. I mean, people fucking love the Addams Family, and they love those fucking, like, remake movies and stuff, too. I don't get it, but that's, I guess, it moves merch. Like, I'm sure the Munsters are going to be a real big hit at Hot Topic. Like, there's going to be shirts and bondage pants about it.
And it's weird because I do root for the guy, like, I hope it's a success for him. I wish him all the best, but man, that movie looks terrible.
Maybe he'll do like other weird remake, like movie relaunches, like his next after the Munsters, he'll do like Gomer Pyle USMC, the movie, but also it's a little bit scary.
It's just so weird because he took something that was cheesy to begin with, like a comedic, American 60s, whatever take on like Frankenstein, like the Universal Monsters or whatever. Let's put him in a goofy sitcom. Okay, that's, it was a successful show. It was a good idea, apparently, and people loved it. And this guy comes along. Obviously, he was a fan of the show growing up, and so he decides he's going to make a movie about it, but then he makes it even cheesier than the actual show. Like, all the things that didn't age well about the TV show, he just hyper-amplifies those things. So it's like Spider Baby without all the transgression. Like, anything that made that movie fun is just gone, and all the shitty stuff, like the low production value and it just looks bad. We should stop talking about it.
Yeah. I will say, like, I do want... Oh, man, Spider Baby is, like, a very Rob Zombie movie. I never thought about that before. I do want Rob Zombie to keep making movies. Glenn Danzig? No, I think if the camera was taken away from Glenn Danzig, that would be okay.
He burned that bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you know that Veronica is a portmanteau of violent and erotica? Because Glenn Danzig's such a cool guy.
Is that seriously what that's supposed to be?
Yes.
The word erotica with a V in front of it?
Is a portmanteau of violent and erotica. It's for his comic book that was then adapted into, he adapted it into a movie.
It's like somebody removed his skull cap and just took a giant dump inside there and put it back, barely, like, haphazardly, like, backwards or whatever, and he's somehow managed to function ever since.
How mad do you think Glenn Danzig was that whenever they're like, we need a rock star turned movie director to direct a movie called Halloween, we're gonna go with Rob Zombie. Probably Glenn Danzig was like, come on! Our big song was called Halloween! Why that guy?
Right? He had great taste growing up in movies, you know? He was definitely, I mean, he's older than me, so he's like a child of the 70s TV era when, like watching like the Sunday horror matinee or whatever, where you'd have the goofy hosts like Elvira or Vampira, or, that he grew up in that area, and he grew up in New Jersey, which is already New Jersey in the 70s. And he was, that's the kind of shit he grew up around, and he loved that stuff. And he came up with this idea to have a punk band that reflected his horror tastes and stuff, which nobody was really doing. I mean, it was a great idea.
Yeah.
They wrote cool songs. They were catchy. He has a great voice. They're fun, and then somewhere along the way, he just became this insufferable douchebag.
Oh, well, speaking of trailers that make you feel weird and say funny things, today, John, we're going to be discussing Alex Garland's 2022 film, Men.
Yay!
Yes. So let's see. Alex Garland, you might know, he was the screenwriter for the movie 28 Days Later and Sunshine. He also wrote the novel that was adapted for the movie The Beach, starring Leonardo DiCaprio.
Don't hold it against him.
Yeah. He, also, his movie directing credits include Ex Machina and Annihilation. He also directed the TV series Devs. And then this movie, and then now he's working on a movie called Civil War, which I'm sure won't be weird at all.
Didn't he say that's going to be his last movie he directs or something like that?
I have no idea. Is he tired of it? Does he not like it anymore?
Is he tired of the 3 movies he made? I don't know. I mean, I guess that was never his thing. I mean, he's always been a writer. I think that was always his primary focus. So maybe that's what he intends, is to get back into writing. But he's so good at making movies.
Yeah, this one's good. He's also, it's been announced that he will be the screenwriter for the film adaptation for the video game Halo.
Dear God.
Yeah. It's like, oh, okay.
Wow.
I can see that, I guess. There's some body horror elements there, and a lot about identity. There's like a voice in the guy's head. I could see it fitting.
Wow.
It's also Annihilation-y.
Yeah, I guess so. Jeez.
Yeah.
I hope he gets paid well.
Yeah. I think he's getting paid pretty well. This movie seems like it did not lack for budget.
Yeah. I didn't feel like they were sparing expenses during this film.
Alex Garland likes to make movies about identity, how one identifies themselves in relation to society, the boundaries of humanity, and even personhood. I wonder if we'll get any of that in here in this movie titled Men.
That's right. That's definitely. He's interested in power and control, and the role that power plays in different types of relationships and stuff, and we get, of course, maybe some of that here as well.
Maybe a little bit.
Just a little. I'm just going to say up front that I fucking love this movie. I love it.
Yeah, this movie is great.
It's damn good. It's way better than I thought it was going to be. And, I mean, it got mixed reviews, which I figured it would. And if you watch it, you'll know why. But, it's fucking killer.
Yeah, it's definitely not for everyone. Like, there's a specific audience for this movie, and I'm glad to be in that audience, but, like, if you're not in that audience, it really doesn't say anything bad about you. Like, it's just this movie is... in Saint Maud, we talked about elevated horror, and we even referenced this movie in there, and people have complaints about it because there is a lot of, like, well, what does that mean? Well, that's kind of vague, and people are talking about it as, like, a symptom of the commercialization of elevated horror and all kinds of stuff. I think that's kind of shitty, because I feel like this movie stands on its own really well, but, you know, whatever.
I think it's a pretty shallow critique. To me, it kind of just gives me the impression that well, I mean, they're pretty much just coming out and saying they didn't understand it. I mean, there's things that are left open, but there's a lot to understand. I mean, the overarching message of the film is pretty clear.
It's also one of those movies that's not really quite as much about, like, not really like a casual viewing movie. It's really a movie to analyze and pick apart. The movie is very forward about the fact that it is using symbolism in complex ways. Like, it doesn't try to hide that. So it's like, it's telling you, like, hey, think about this. Like, put this in context with another thing. But, you know, that's not what everyone wants out of a horror movie. I don't even want that out of a horror movie every time. It's just every once in a while, like, a horror movie like that, like, really catches and hooks me, and this did a great job of that.
There's certain things that I am drawn to, or any viewer is drawn to, you know, when regarding the movies that they like to watch, and you know, but that doesn't necessarily mean that a movie could have all those things and you still don't like it, and a movie could have other shit that you generally don't like and you still enjoy the movie. I mean, in this case, it's one of those movies that's touching on things that I like, and it's also a film that I enjoy. So for me, it's like a win-win. It's kind of like In the Earth was for me, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we're going to go in this direction. Cool, I like this. And it was handled in a way that I enjoyed, so it just made it all the better.
Absolutely. John, did you know that men is a portmanteau of me and women?
Wow, I did not.
Yeah. And speaking of all of that, this movie kind of has Alex Garland's very own Sherry Moon Zombie in it, because this movie features just a little bit Sonoya Mizuni, who is in every single Alex Garland directed thing.
And God bless her. She's fucking great. She was great in Devs. She's...
I need to watch that.
She's a protagonist in Devs, so she's all over that movie, and she's great in it. She's really good. I love that show, so I can't recommend it enough. But yeah, she does a great job. It was cool to see that she was in this. I didn't realize that, you know, because it's just her voice.
Yeah, she plays a 911 operator, so it's like, he was like, look, I know you can't, but could you just, like, get on a microphone and just say a few lines for us? Just say, stay on the line, help is on the way. And we could squeeze you in there.
And I'll get you a paycheck, don't worry.
And then this movie stars Jessie Buckley, who, if you don't know who that is, no one could blame you, but she got her career started on one of those, like, television talent shows.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
She came in second place, and it launched a British television and then film career that is apparently going quite well. So, hey, good job.
She's great. Yeah, she's an Irish actress. She's been in a few things that I've seen. She was in that movie, I'm thinking of Ending Things, which was kind of billed as a horror movie. It was her and that, is his name Chessie too? The Plemons guy? That weird looking red haired guy. It's kind of like the Philip Seymour Hoffman of today.
Oh, yeah, he was in like the final season of that
Breaking Bad.
Yeah, where he looks like a horrible Matt Damon.
Yes. That's him.
Nice.
So she's in a horror movie with him, sort of a horror movie, and it's very surreal. But I don't know if I necessarily liked it. It was definitely worth watching, but I like her, and then she's also in The Lost Daughter with Olivia Colman, which Maggie Gyllenhaal directed. That's pretty good, and then just a bunch of other stuff, but she's great in this. I mean, she's really good.
She's in 10 episodes of the Fargo TV series, which I also haven't seen but want to.
Wow, I started the first season, but I didn't get much further. It was good. I just didn't follow through on it.
That's what happened for me with devs. Like I got to a point where I was like, oh, this is neat, and look, it's the guy from Parks and Rec. This is gonna be cool. Oh, he's eating kale. Okay, and I think that's about as far as I got into it.
Nice.
And this movie showcases the talents of one Rory Kinnear. Remarkably unrelated to Greg Kinnear.
Yeah.
You might know him best as multiple characters from the TV series Our Flag Means Death, where he is horrifically mutilated by a blade.
I love this guy.
Yeah, he is such a trooper in this movie. He really goes after all the things.
Yeah, he's not very reserved in this movie.
No, he does a great job. We also have Papa Asiadu playing, I forget his name already.
James?
James, yeah. He plays James. He's not in most of the film. He just pops up every once in a while as little memories.
Does a great job.
A really good evening to have.
Just a fine evening and great performance. Oh, yeah. And don't forget, Rory Kinnear was also the pig fucker in Black Mirror.
That's right. He's Prime Minister Pigfucker in the premiere episode of Black Mirror, the one that got us all to think, oh wow, Black Mirror is going to be the greatest show ever, and then it kind of wasn't.
I know, it really did start with a bang, didn't it? A literal bang.
One really bangy bang.
He was also in Penny Dreadful, which I actually enjoyed him in that. I was expecting to hate that show, and I really ended up liking it, so I ended up blasting through the whole series. It was pretty good.
Oh, nice. He was also in the sequel series to that show.
Yeah, the whatever the second season was. I didn't see that, or the second storyline. I didn't see that one. I've heard it's good too, though. But
is he the Frankenstein in that show?
He is in the first. Yeah, in the first series. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah,
I could see him doing a good Frankie.
He's great. There's something strange about that dude, and but he's also able to play. He's just one of those guys who's kind of a chameleon, and he really showcases that in this, of course.
Yeah, he could play a caretaker, a vicar, a little boy, what have you.
God. Yep.
Yeah. Maybe a bartender, even.
Maybe a couple blokes at the old pub.
A few local blokes.
The soundtrack was done by a couple guys who have collaborated with Garland quite a bit. It's Ben. What's the first guy's name? Anyway, the other guy's name is Jeff Barrow. He was in Portishead, and
cool.
He's done a lot of soundtrack music with the this other guy, Ben. What's his nards? It's Ben Salisbury. He's known for doing, he's just basically known for doing soundtrack stuff. And, of course, Barrow has worked with him. They did, I think they worked on Ex Machina and Annihilation. Nice. And they're definitely on Devs. The soundtrack on Devs is great. Yeah. He's also, Barrow was also, or is also in the hip-hop group Quakers. I've never heard of that.
Oh, good. I've never heard of that, but now I really want to go listen to whatever that is.
They rap about having no electricity.
Thine self stay pure.
Put your handles in the air.
Our new mixtape, Oatmeal.
Heart-healthy rap.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, the soundtrack of this is pretty intense. It's it lays off sometimes, but you've really got good background noise. You can really hear apples hitting the ground.
The sound design in this movie is amazing. I mean, I highly recommend watching this movie with headphones because it's really, really well done. And the sound is a real big part of this movie. I mean, there's scenes that wouldn't be as effective if you didn't hear the wind and all the birds and
the bone snapping.
Yeah, all the little ambient sounds. There's a scene where you can hear traffic in the distance and you can hear a siren way off in the distance. Like so far, it doesn't even matter. It's just really well done.
Yeah, a lot of this movie hinges on not really, but kind of hinges on the fact that she's in a semi-isolated position where she's in a cottage surrounded by woods, but the town is just on the other side of the trees. So, yeah, they did a really great job on it. And also, like, some of the musical elements. Also, a strange soundtrack choice as far as the opening and closing song, but, whatevs.
It's strange until you really kind of like read the lyrics and realize how they're really a pretty sarcastic or cynical like way of looking at the events in the movie.
Oh, and I'm gonna have to pull up those lyrics.
The opening song is sung by what is her name? Leslie Duncan. It's called Love Song. And then at the end, it's the same song, but Elton John sings it.
So it's for real?
Yeah, so it's a woman at the beginning and him at the end. I swear to God, I don't think it's him. It doesn't sound like him, but I read that it was him.
I didn't catch any of that.
just a little part of that whole dichotomy, I guess.
Maybe we'll have to dramatically read the lyrics at the end of the episode.
Oh, that would be amazing. I will say about the music, like, when I started the movie, I was watching it on my computer, and when that song came up, it was so out of place for me that I thought my computer was playing some weird song, and I didn't know why.
Yeah, like one of your other tabs had decided to play a YouTube video.
I was like, what? Okay, what? After, and then I realized, oh, okay, I think she closed her car door and it stopped or something. I don't remember.
It's interesting. I wasn't familiar with the song at all, so I was just like, oh, okay, we've got like some singer-songwriter love song. All right, whatevs.
Yeah, very British kind of folky pop song.
Well, let's dive into it, John.
Balls deep.
The movie opens with Harper, our main character, played by Jessie Buckley. She is a bloody nose, and she is standing in a room, like an apartment at dusk. She's got, the big windows. You can see the light from the setting sun coming in. And looking out the window, she sees a surprised dude falling down past her window.
Super slow-mo.
Yeah, super slow-mo. He does not look like that's what he was expecting to be doing, maybe. And then all of a sudden that's over, and we see dandelion tufts floating around in a beautiful countryside, where we see Harper is driving around. She's taking herself a little holiday out into the country. She is be-turtlenecked, and she finds her way to a nice British estate-style Airbnb, I guess. And it's very slow and leisurely and a little jarring, I would say, like, based on like that opening sequence where we don't know what's going on. If you watched the teaser, like the original teaser first, you know that like it seems like this movie has some sort of weird relationship to gravity, because you see stuff about like apples just falling out of a tree. Perhaps they fall far from a tree. We don't know. It seems like maybe they don't fall far from a tree. And of course you see a guy falling past a window. But that doesn't really seem to be playing into here. She makes it to this cottage, and a very toothsome British fellow named Jeffrey is there, played by Rory Kinnear. He greets her as Mrs. Marlowe. She says, no, my name is Harper, not Mrs. Marlowe. And that takes on a whole thing. He tours her around the place. It's a old style door system where opening the door is lifting a latch, and they have a single key, and it's like a giant piece of pig iron key, and there's just the one, and you don't really have to worry about it. He mentions how old the place is, and he's like, it was around at the time of Shakespeare, even older than that probably, and he's like, goes off into his head about it, which her last name was Marlowe, and he's mentioning Shakespeare. I can't imagine what that could be alluding to. When she first got there, she went and she picked one of the apples off of the tree out front and ate it, and seemed to have a very good time eating it. she mentioned that to him, and he says, oh, no, mustn't do that. He calls it scrumping, which I had to look up. Apparently, scrumping is fruit theft. So
is it really?
It is, yeah. If you steal fruit, you are scrumping.
I thought it was like a euphemism for delicious. I didn't realize.
Nope. I guess maybe scrumptious is because it's a delicious fruit. Maybe fruit is scrump in England. Oh, yes. A nice bushel of scrump.
Run to the Tesco and get me a bag of scrump.
Let's see. He's showing her around. They're in a big fancy bathroom, and he has this awkward moment where he tells her not to flush her lady things because they're on a septic system and they can't handle it, and it's just very long and awkward and uncomfortable. Then he says he's gonna go and asks again about her husband, and she says that she just hasn't changed her name, and he's like, oh, good job, Jeffrey, you really did it again. And another awkward pause at the door, and he's like, all right, bye. It's really good. At this point in the movie, he's awkward. It's like a little bit icky, but also like he's a likable enough fellow.
Yeah, he seems like, he comes off as the likable doofus, but there's obviously something bizarrely, like, tense below the surface there with that interaction. She's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
She wants to be left alone. That's the whole purpose of being there. He's just awkward in general, and so, he's also extremely British, like, that's all right, let's just take a look at it, all right, that's right, all right. Like the...
Tea's through there, TV over there.
Milk in the fridge, tea in the cabinet, and all the usual places, all right. It's like, God.
Yeah, and it also seems like maybe to a dude, he seems like a pleasant enough fellow, but maybe to a non-dudely person, he seems a little bit more threatening and unpleasant, which, Yeah.
Don't flush the lady things down the toilet. We've got a septic tank situation. Okay.
Yeah, lots of the little humming to himself bits. Yeah.
Very uncomfortable.
Yeah. We get she talks to her friend Riley, who is a character that almost throughout the movie we only see as a voice chat person that she talks to and does exposition to reiterate her situation. She tells Riley that he asked about James. Riley's like, what? How would he have possibly asked about James? And she's like, well, it's, I accidentally signed in under Mrs. Marlowe and all of this stuff. And we then flash back to that original scene in the dusky room. Now Harper does not have a bloody nose, and James, the fellow from the window earlier, is not falling past a window. Now he's in there with them. They're having a super intense discussion because she has told him that she is divorcing him. And he's talking about it. He talks about the fact that he understands, apparently she said that she's not divorcing him, she's divorcing his behavior over the past few years. And all of this stuff happens, and it boils and spins out of control, where now he's talking about the fact that if she divorces him, he's going to commit suicide. And then it quickly moves on from there that if she divorces him and he commits suicide, it's her fault, and that she is killing him with her action of divorcing him, and all of this stuff. It gets real intense. She's talking about the fact that this kind of behavior is in fact the reason why she has to divorce him, and that the fact that he's threatening her with this stuff is, a big part of that, and that it's not sane, and that he can't do this, and so it goes from weird to whatever kind of cottage tone, and then all of a sudden just super intense interpersonal manipulative drama, and damn does this movie take turns.
Yeah, no kidding. He's displaying, he's like a textbook of all the horrible things that men do in these kinds of situations, where the obviously he's largely responsible for this position that she finds herself in, where she really doesn't feel like she has any other option than to end the relationship. And then he displays very quickly the kind of behavior that must have led to this, because he's accusatory, angry, he screams in a rage, scares her, he, decides that it's clearly that she's led him to kill himself, there's just no other option. I mean, it's just all the, petulant child behavior and the guilt trip and the gaslighting and all the bullshit that guys pull. So, yeah, we're off to quite a start.
Yeah, it was a real surprise. The first time watching it, I was just not expecting that scene to be here at all.
For two people that have very little interaction throughout the film, it's so pivotal, and their interaction is so natural. I mean, it's really like you feel like you walked in on two people arguing, and you're just like, I'm just gonna, you go, I'll be out here.
No, it's fine. I'll leave. I'll go.
I'll just jump off the balcony. It's fine.
Do you need me to stay? I don't want to stay.
I'll be outside.
Yeah. I have to take a huge shit.
As it turns out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So, anyways, yeah, he does a great job. I mean, it's crazy because the guy's on screen for 10 minutes most, and he just really
James,
his performances, Anyways, after that, she goes outside. She's going to go for a little walk, or for a long walk, as it turns out. And we see her walking through just gorgeous British countryside, forests, fields. We see pathways, and I mean, everything is so green, just explosively green on my screen. It was gorgeous. And then with the headphones, you could hear the wind swirling around, and her feet walking through the grass. And if hopefully at some point in your lives, listeners, you've had a chance to do something like that, because it really makes you remember the feeling of being outside like that and how nice it feels. So she's going on this walk. It seems like she has an almost spiritual experience, where she's kind of at the top of this walkway and the hill, basically, and it starts to rain, and she's smiling and looking up, and the music starts getting all it seems like she's having a transcendent bond with the natural world, which is probably the intention there. And so she, along the way, she comes across a long, dark tunnel, and dark as in jet fucking black, just with a tiny little light at the end, with the other opening at the far end, and it's all drippy, and you can hear the water dripping into puddles, and it's muddy, and just your typical disgusting tunnel that seems to pop up all over the fucking place in Europe. And
and every horror movie.
Yeah. They went to the tunnel store and picked up, I'd like one horror tunnel, please.
I think the entirety of Jodie Foster's movie Brave took place in this tunnel.
Yes, they shot the entire film in this tunnel.
Yeah.
So she walks to the mouth of the tunnel, and she gives a to test the echo properties, which apparently are world class.
The best echo tunnel ever.
I've never heard an echo tunnel that sounds exactly like a digital delay pedal looping. It's remarkable audio quality in that tunnel.
Yeah. I believe Reggie Watts was born in this tunnel.
Whoa. The big black curvature of that's representative of his hair.
Yeah.
So it just echoes on and on and on, trails off, and then she starts doing this layering thing. She realizes, I can almost not almost, she harmonizes with herself with these echoing sounds. And it sounds really dumb, and I guess it kind of is, yes. But it actually works. It's got a weird effect. But it is really dumb.
And I mean, if you're by yourself and people aren't watching you in a movie, it's the type of thing you would do.
Oh, for sure.
Just
If you discovered it echoed like that, I would probably spend 2 hours just dicking around in that tunnel. And she probably would have too, until she realizes that as she's gone maybe a third of the way in, there's somebody at the end of the tunnel that just becomes clear in silhouette because of the backlit. And it's a person stands up, you can't make out any details, and then they basically just start running at her into the tunnel. So she gets the fuck out of there.
Yeah. She GTF right the fuck O's.
Yes, she does. Wisely. And then she takes off, and as she's like, we see her kind of high-stepping it through the wilderness to get out of that area, and we see these dandelion seeds kind of floating, like there's one seed floating in front of her face as she comes up to what would have been another tunnel. It almost made me think it was maybe the same tunnel, but now it's bricked up, so it's completely sealed off. Either way, we
see that she.
Yeah, go ahead.
She missed her path that she was supposed to go up. The camera focuses on her walking right past it.
That's right. Yeah, it had the little footholds and stuff. I know, because I was like, okay, that's fine. So so the dandelion seed has, it, honestly, I don't know exactly what it means, other than it represents some sort of boundary between the natural world and maybe her, not specifically urban life, but, whatever kind of life we have outside of what we perceive as the natural world. So it's like some sort of transition point, I guess. I don't know. Anyways, she sees this weird blocked tunnelway. It kind of looks like it would be like a railroad crossing over the top. And I think that's what it used to be, if I remember. But so she gets there. She's blocked off. So she climbs up this embankment. Still misses the pathway, I believe. But she comes across this farm that looks like maybe a dilapidated farm, or a home, or a home farm, or a farm home.
Steadfast.
Yeah, it's very worn down.
Yeah.
And there's a witchfinder general living in there, and
yes.
Vincent Price comes out and he's like, "You have walked into the wrong movie." And
some call me Tim.
So she kind of looks around. It's extremely creepy, but really gross rundown. Just, which, again, if you've ever walked anywhere out in the country in Europe, you come across these things about every 5 minutes. So
fucking awesome.
So weird. I used to see stuff like that when I lived there. It's like you go out in the middle of nowhere, and then you come across an abandoned house in the woods. It's like, why would somebody? But okay, whatever. So
yeah. I definitely would have go, like, people are just like, oh yeah, I found a Viking sword in a lake. It's like, oh, fuck yes, let's go there.
When I lived in France, I remember we went to eat dinner at some friends of my parents, and there were other families there, and all the kids got together and they were playing, and there was like a wooded area. They must have been a suburb or something, except I remember it being in the city, but anyways, we went out to this wooded area and we were playing, and there was this big hole in the ground, and they had like a rope swing over the hole, and we were swinging back and forth, and then later, that one of the kids was like, "That's a bomb crater from World War II."
Oh God, Jesus!
I was like, "What?" It's like, "Yeah, my dad told me about it." I was like, "Oh my God." It's a weird place being in Europe.
Weird place to play.
Yeah. So, anyways, you come across stuff like this. I mean, when you place this old, buildings get abandoned and they lay there for God knows how long until they just kind of fall away. So this place is falling apart. She kind of walks around and she turns back and looks at the place, and what do you know? There's a little naked man, like, just standing off in the distance again, just standing there looking at her. And she busts out her cell phone camera and takes a photo of the building and then gets the hell out of there. And I think we see his face at that point, don't we? It's
a little bit in the distance, but it's Rory Kinnear.
It's Rory Kinnear. He's all like weird looking. So, anyways,
yeah, he's like powdered wig white.
Yeah, he doesn't look good. And
yeah.
So she gets out of there. Again, probably not a bad idea. And then we have another flashback scene where this is obviously post falling past the window, because James is now on the sidewalk. There's like an iron railing. He's kersplatted himself. His ankle was snapped and bent back in an impossible angle, which was disgusting.
Yes.
Part of it looked like his brain was exposed, which I didn't really understand because of the way he landed.
It looks like
he hit things on the way down.
His skull got like dented in on multiple parts.
Oh, on the way down?
Yeah.
His arm is like pierced in the maybe mid forearm and torn up to about the palm and stuck in, one of the spikes of like an iron fence or whatever. It's horrible. It's really graphic, and she's standing there looking at him, obviously pretty traumatized. So then we cut to a shot of her in the tub, and she's looking at her phone. We're back in the house now, back in the country, and she's looking at her phone, and it's weird because she kind of like laughs, but then she zooms in and sees the naked guy and gets disturbed again. Like, but you knew it was okay. Whatever. I didn't understand that.
Well, that whole thing, like once she climbed out of that ditch area and found the ruined farm, she was like happy again. She was like, "Oh, my issue is over."
But didn't she see him standing there, or did she not?
She saw she pulled out her phone before she saw him.
Oh.
So like she was like, "Oh, what a lovely little dilapidated cottage. I think I'll take a snap." And so she's like taking a photo, and then she like notices him, and she's like, "Oh fuck!" And yeah, it's like this whole like up and down emotional journey for her. Unfortunately,
yes, it is. Oh fuck! Oh fucking hell! It's so
bloody brilliant.
What incarnation? Except she's Irish. But,
yeah.
Insert Irish accent here.
Tarnation! Mother of Jefferson Davis!
Holy nips upon Thames! Oh my god. What is wrong with me? Okay, so anyways, she... So she sees a picture of the naked man, and then we cut to her. She's playing piano, which is kind of curious because she told Jeffrey that she didn't play piano. And it was obvious that she did when she said it. It was just kind of like, she plays piano.
Yeah, I think it was one of those things where it was like, if I tell him that I play piano, he's going to want me to play piano for him, and it's going to be real creepy.
That's true. So she sits down and goes, dong, dong, and then busts out like this beautiful Chopin. It's like a Chopin thing. I forget what it was, but... and so then we hear, as the music kind of plays over, we see more scenery shots, and we see pictures of like trees like branching, like the area where a tree branches off covered in moss. It looks like a person's crotch maybe, or like trees that are like all weird, like vaguely human-like positions, which I thought was pretty cool. Because I didn't even catch that, until maybe the second or third go through. And then she's making she's making a business call. She's sitting at the table in the whatever room. And as she's talking on the phone, the naked guy is just like strolling by in the background. It's so disturbing. And she's just chatting away, and the camera will change angles, and you'll see him walk past the window, and then it changes an angle again, and he walks to he's like basically maybe 50 feet behind her outside the window, and he's just standing there looking at her. And
other times he's just like pressing his dick up against the glass.
So she gets she gets on the phone with Riley, and she's giving her the video like through her phone. She's giving her a tour of the house. This is the conservatory.
Yeah. Oh, look at the lovely patina on the floor.
This is a baby grand piano.
It's a really nice place.
It is. It's a beautiful house. And she's giving her the tour. Everything's great. And then while she's on the business call, naked man comes back. No. Let's see what happens. Yeah, he comes back. And no, what is it? She gets off. Oh, that's right. She's showing That's right. She's showing her friend around. And as she turns in one area, she looks out the window and she sees the guy outside. So she says, I'll call you back. Which I would be like, call the police right now. You're like, I'd call you back. There's a naked lunatic outside.
Yeah.
So whatever. So she goes through into like the entryway where the door is, and the door is cracked open. So it's like dun dun. It's very intense. And then we see kind of like Shadow, like he's obviously right at the door. So she runs up, slams the door, and he sticks his hand through the mail slot at that point, doesn't he? Just briefly.
I think so, yeah. She sees the shadow of him, and she gets the door closed. I think she's already called the police, like she's on the line with the police.
She calls 999.
Yeah, 999. Oh, silly British people.
She talks to Toshiro Mifune, or whatever her name is.
Wow, yeah.
I could be wrong on the name, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's Toshiro Mifune adjacent.
Yeah. So she's talking to the dispatch person, and so his hands through the thing. It's freaky, whatever. And then we cut back to her having an argument with James. He comes in. She's on her cell phone. She's texting somebody. He takes the phone, looks at it. Yeah. And then she's all
unlock it.
Yeah. They get into an argument over what it says, and she's telling someone she's afraid of him, and he's like, afraid of me? Why? What the fuck's wrong? Like, whatever could she be afraid of, James? Then he wants her to unlock her phone. She won't do it, so he punches her in the face. Just hauls off and slugs her right in the face, knocks her down, and it's nasty. And she forces him out. She gets pissed. Now he's, I'm sorry. It was an accident. I slipped and my fist fell out or whatever. Like,
yeah.
And she got the fuck out. So she kicks him out, says she never wants to see him again, or I will never see you again, or whatever. And so we're kind of approaching, like, we're starting to kind of get an idea for where this is heading.
Yes. Yes. She locks him out, back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity. The police have shown up. They arrest the nude Apple guy, who I think when she sees him out the window, he's like under the apple tree and like doing this whole like Adam scene where he's like picking it apple off the tree while his dong is just hanging out,
just flippity flopping.
Yeah, just going full foreskin on here. Let's see. So they arrest him, and we see him, he's like pinned to the ground while they're handcuffing him, and we see now that whereas before he was just kind of like a pure powder white, now he's covered with cuts, all of these little cuts all over his body. His
skin's all pitted and weird looking, like he's just weird looking dude. Yeah, he's got cuts and
Yeah, he's all like zigzagged with cuts and like dirty and now whereas before he looked like some sort of powdery ghost, now he looks like a guy that's been like sleeping naked in the outdoors for centuries. The police woman, the Bobette, I guess you might say, is there, and she's very reassuring, saying all of this stuff that it looks like he's been sleeping rough and he's stinky. She's not looking forward to having him in the car with her, but she's glad that she was there, and she's the nicest person to physically encounter her so far. It's good, and Riley feels better. Or not Riley, Harper feels better. She calls Riley and tells her all about it. Riley is like, oh, well, I should obviously come out there and be with you at your very, very nice place and not just stay here where everything sucks. She's like, no, stay there. I want to be alone. So part of her being alone is she now goes on a nice little journey to the local ancient cathedral church built out of old stones. There's she sits in the pew and does herself a little scream pray with lots of yelling and shouting. We see a priest looming in the shadows and just like pausing as she screams and then just going back further into the shadows and disappearing. And at this point we see that the church's podium on the front of it, facing towards the pews, is a icon of the Green Man, who is a kind of a universal deity. Like, the Green Man shows up in iconography throughout the world, throughout history. If you've seen anything that looks like a face that has leaves growing out of it, that's the Green Man. He's all over the place, everywhere. Historians and archaeologists don't have any sort of agreement about what he means, because he's just so he's everywhere, like creation mythology and like flood mythology. He just shows up anywhere that people have recorded history of non-monotheist beliefs.
Yeah, he's associated with, the obvious things that any figure with covered in greenery that looks like it's living would obviously be associated with, like rebirth and the typical kinds of things that an agricultural and very, myth-oriented society would attribute to some sort of a god-type creature.
Yeah, it's fucking awesome. I love this facet of the movie that he keeps, like, hammering on this point. And then, hidden from Harper, on the opposite side, facing the cross and where the priest would be, right at about, crotch level, is a Sheila na gig figure, which is another one where, like, its origin is mysterious and no one knows, but it's very similar to lots of things throughout history and all cultures, and it is a female fertility-looking icon where her legs are spread and she's just, like, holding her labia stretched open, maybe giving birth or maybe just gaping with acceptance.
Yeah, it's just exhibiting a grotesque, as I read somewhere, a mockery of female fertility, which is shown in contrast to, in this case, to the Green Man, which is kind of being represented in the film as a male like a masculine take on the idea of fertility, which is a bastardization of how we think of creation and fertility. These are things that are generally associated with women. And so whatever the hell's going on in this village is like flipped it and is using these images kind of in the reverse way. This exaggeration of the female form is almost meant to be like a mockery. It's even hidden from, like, the general view of the church. You're just presented with this male figure, which is now representing fertility and rebirth and, things that generally are not considered masculine traits.
Right, yeah. But then also it's, like, literally on the flip side of the podium from the male fertility thing. Like, it's really cool. There is a lot of good symbolic meat to chew into there. One of the things that I liked is apparently a lot of the existing examples of the Sheila na gig is like from pre-Roman times, like in the stones, and then has just been reused in the construction of other ones. So, like, there are even some where it's, like, on its side because they didn't care that it was there. They just needed a piece of rock to build a wall. It's like, fuck yeah, that's awesome.
They're just all over the place.
Yeah, they're just, like, hiding in plain sight. Like, oh, look, there's a big old gapey grotesque vagina thing. Nice.
I'm gonna need a brick. Oh, well, that's good enough.
Yeah, that goes. It's fucking cool. I love this stuff. Let's see. We flash back to just after Harper was punched by James. That's happening, like, after as she's sitting in the pews. It's flashing between her remembering all of the stuff and her back at the pews and doing all of the screaming. I don't remember if does it show the then fall at this point? Is that whenever it shows him falling past the window again?
I don't think so. I think I might have jumped the gun, and I think this is where this is where we see her post punch. Like at this scene, it comes in, she's laying on the ground. And she gets up and yells at him and kicks him out. That's where she kicks him out of the apartment.
Oh, okay. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, the fall comes later.
She ends up after having her little come to Jesus moment inside the church. She goes outside and she's just walking around. It's a lovely churchyard. It's a really good place for a stroll. But then at this little isolated corner, she sees a little boy wearing like a Marilyn Monroe mask or something. And he talks to her and takes it off, and there, underneath the mask, is just a horrible little CGI Rory Kinnear face on a little, like, 12-year-old boy body. And ooh, is it bad!
It's so disturbing, because it doesn't even look like a child's face. It's just his face on a child.
Yeah, it's just they scaled his face down to fit on a child head. It doesn't look real, but it is unpleasant, which I kind of think is the point.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think that we're necessarily supposed to find it believable, but it's whatever. And he wants to play hide and seek with her, and she does not want to play hide and seek, so she's like, maybe later. And then he gets a little bit cussy. At this point, the looming shadow vicar from earlier pops around, and it's just more Rory Kinnear, and he has long, graceful salt and pepper hair, and he's wearing the like full length priestly robes, and he's like, no, little boy, she said she didn't want to, maybe later, and I think he calls her a stupid bitch, the little boy does, and then he tells the vicar that he can go fuck himself, and then the vicar's like, what? You first. It's like, oh god. And so then after the little boy leaves, the vicar gets Harper to sit down with him and talk about things. He talks about the fact that he saw her while she was in the, like, shouting and stuff in the pews, and should have approached her then, but didn't, and so he's doing it now, and she talks about all the stuff with James, and it seems like it's going well, and he even, like, touches her knee, and he's like, you need to be seen, and all of these feelings of being seen and guilt and stuff are normal. Then at a certain point, like, it goes from being really good and exploring her experience and her uncertainty, but in a way that's accepting, to all of a sudden where now he's saying that it really was her fault and she really, must be experiencing all of these negative emotions because she's realizing that it is her fault that James killed himself, and that if she had done something different, he would still be alive, at which point she tells him he can, go fuck off, and leaves.
Yeah, he gives her that line, remember? You must wonder why you drove him to it.
Yes, that's it. It's like, oh, fuck, dude. He just, like, goes from, like, such a cool spiritual advisor to, like, the most horrible, horrible man.
Like, he lays his hand on her, like, he's got his hand on her knee, which is already just creepy anyway. And, he's talking to her, and everything seems okay, and then he says, well, and you probably feel a bit of guilt yourself or whatever, and she kind of's like, yeah, I guess I do or whatever, and then he, like, leads it into this whole other direction, and it's just like, oh, wow, okay, what a douchebag.
The worst.
It's just like, fuck off! And he sits there and pulls out a chapstick. He's just like, just gently puts the chapstick and then sets his hand on the bench where she was sitting, like on her warm spot. Yeah. And his finger just casually is like between two of the slats on the bench, just kind of fingering the bench. I was like, oh my god.
Yeah. It's bad. His like pointer fingernail is even like a little longer than the rest of them, and he's just touching the warmth of where her butt was while he's like mwah, mwah, his lips together to get like the chapstick thoroughly applied.
It's so disgusting.
Yeah.
And his eyes are unnaturally black. Like you can't see his. It's just like the pupils are just jet black, like a little too black for normal pupils. But it's pretty. That's pretty heavy shit.
Yeah, he would. This is a great. 40 years ago, this would have been a great Vincent Price character.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Oh man, it's good stuff. It's so uncomfortable. I didn't know what the deal was with the Marilyn. What did you think about the Marilyn Monroe mask?
I think it is representative of this like gender difference and like that whole fertility thing where it's trying to like flip the fertility around, and it's the little boy who's wearing a Marilyn Monroe mask but then like wanting to be like a icky boy towards a woman type thing. It's she's like a symbol of female sexuality, particularly, men portray her as like she's not even a real person, she's just an object. So I guess wearing the mask would make sense for that little shit. Yeah, horrible
Samuel
monster.
Samuel, he's a troubled lad. It's like, thanks, Vicar. Understatement.
Oh yeah, and one of the things that Vicar he says, sometimes men hit women.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, that was part of the you must have you drove him to it thing, is that she didn't give him an opportunity to apologize after hitting her, and that was part of his just it's a thing that happens. He even says it's not a capital offense. It's like, holy shit, dude.
I love her. I think that's the first instance where she gives her trademark response to so many of the crazy things that happen to her. She goes, "What?" It's like, what the fuck did you just say?
Are you kidding me?
And she's like, "Fuck off," and just leaves. Oh my God, it's amazing. Yeah. So we've left that scene. We basically see a little single dandelion seed, or whatever you call them, floating down into a disgusting empty eye socket of a dead deer. Yeah. And just floats down in there, and then we get this weird, collection of weird shots where we see, the Sheila Nagin, the Green Man, and there's chanting and different colors projected on these images, and, all this kind of, hallucinogenic sort of stuff. Kind of brief, and it doesn't last too long. And then...
And it's got her playing over it too.
Yeah, that's right, echoing through. And then we see it back. The dandelion comes back out through the eye hole, and now the head is in an advanced state of decomposition. And as the camera pulls all the way up, we see this rotting deer carcass, which is absolutely disgusting. And it's just pulling up. I guess it's like the dandelion vision or something. I thought that was really cool. And so then we see the naked dude. I think he's in some sort of pit or something. It seemed like he was in a hole in the ground, but it had cement walls. I didn't know what was going on.
It was in some sort of semi-natural, semi-artificial chamber.
Yeah.
And he's just having himself a good little time.
Just making slits and filling them with leaves and just having a little party.
Man, this movie loves slits.
Yes, it does. He's got a cut, a horizontal line cut in his forehead, and he's shoving a piece of it's a leaf, but it looks like a holly leaf or something, whatever you see on the Green Man, basically. And
why would you draw that conclusion?
It's just, I'm just saying. That was one of those moments where I was like, oh. So we cut to the pub, and Jeffrey's in the pub, being Jeffrey.
He's having trouble with a crossword puzzle.
That's right. P, it's got a P and then an R, and then... Oh, come on, Jeffrey.
What's a 5-letter word for rubbish?
Hello, Jeffrey. Oh, pomegranate. There we are.
Yeah.
And then, and we see the other people. The place is just full of Rorys. There's the yellow mohawk mullet Maury. I mean, the Mohawk mullet Rory, and then the guy across from him, some other douchey British Rory, and then the bartender is the bearded, wizened bartender Rory, and
righto.
It's so weird. So Harper comes into this scene, and Jeffrey buys her a drink, which she doesn't really want him to do. So, and then
your money's no good here.
Yeah. Then this cop comes in, which is like pretty much just plain Rory. Just kind of not a lot of makeup Rory, just Rory as a cop, as a Bobby. And he comes in, they have a little chit-chat, and they're talking about the Naked Man, and he lets her know that they let him go because they didn't really have anything to hold him on, and or to hold on to. Oh my God. So she's like, what, you let him go? And he's like, that's fine, he's perfectly harmless. Like, no, he's not fucking perfectly, whatever. So she's pissed off, and she storms out, and on her way out, she goes, wankers. It's so great. And so on her way home, it's dark. She's walking past the cemetery. It's, creepy ambience. And then she hears this scream, which we're associating with the naked green man. This horrific shriek.
Yeah, somewhere between like a weird bird call and a monkey dog and
it's horrible. And so she takes off running back to the house, which, was probably a good call. And she gets back to the house. She's telling Riley all about the crazy shit that happened. And in the meantime, Riley says something about, when I come there, I'm going to come there, and when I come there, I'm going to, if anybody gives you any more shit, I'm going to take that axe and fuck them up or whatever. And she's like, what axe? And she's like, the one behind you. And so we see there's an axe in like the hearth behind Riley, because that's where I keep my axe.
Yeah, it's right next to a pile of split wood.
Yeah, and split wood in my living room.
Yeah, and it totally is important to any other part of the movie moving forward.
Well, actually it is.
It is?
Yes, it's important to the very end.
Okay.
We'll get there.
Interesting.
I know. I missed it, and then I caught it again later. But so, anyways, like on another viewing. So she's talking to Riley. Riley sees the axe, because I was like, "Why is she bringing?" And then I realized later, "Oh, okay, I got it now." So yeah, she says, "I'm going to use it on that guy or whatever." She's on her way. Then the phone cuts out. It does this weird distortion thing that it had done earlier when she was talking to Riley, where it's like the like demon face for just like a fraction of a second kind of thing.
Yeah, a distortion thing that your phone never actually does. It's like throwback TV distortion type thing. Yeah. But
we'll let it slide. It didn't really.
It's fine.
It was really out of place. I thought it didn't really make it didn't even make it interpretive sense. Like, oh, this must be, I don't know what this is at all.
Yeah, what is it supposed? It got a point across.
Yeah, it was creepy, but
yeah,
it didn't have anything to do with anything really. So whatever. So then she gets her friend Riley texts her because the phone disconnects, and Riley says, "Just what does she say? Just text me the directions or something like that."
Mm-hmm.
And then she says, "Okay, yeah, I'll send you over a map or whatever." And then she gets that text back. I already know where it is. And then the next text, you stupid bitch. With the letter U, Yeah. Don't want to be too mean.
Text message.
Yeah. Okay. Keep it short.
I like that because it's like such a throwback to like classic slasher. Like, oh, okay, this is good. I like that.
He's already in the house kind of thing. I like it. It had to be Samuel because he did the letter U. You stupid bitch.
Oh, you're right. I didn't think about it. It probably was Samuel.
Because he's the one who calls her a stupid bitch earlier, right?
Yeah, no one else does.
So,
well,
yeah. So the lights, this is when the lights start flashing. This is where we enter into the final act, I guess you could say. And you better strap yourself in, folks. But so lights start flashing at the house. She sees the cop, Bobby, outside, just standing there, much in the same way that the Naked Man was just standing there. So she goes out there and she says, what are you doing? And he just stands there and looks at her. And, she's trying to figure out what the fuck he's doing there. And then the lights flash out and then back on again and he's gone. That's fine. And then all the apples fall off the tree in what is shown as slow-mo to us. I don't know if she's seeing it in slow-mo, but it's a very weird effect. It just looks kind of weird, all the apples falling off the tree. And then out of nowhere, the fucking pub guy, which I think it was not the blonde-haired one, but one of them, it doesn't matter. He's just
one of the blokes.
You hear running footsteps, and she looks, and this motherfucker is like running directly at her. And she gets in the house at the last second and slams the door in his face. It's fucking intense. Because it's just like, okay, she's now completely under siege by something that I didn't know what it was. I wasn't sure where it was going. I mean, all the men are toxic masculinity business is pretty overt. It's not hard to miss. A lot of the symbolism is pretty straightforward, but how is he going to portray it? And if you've read any of the reviews, you know that the end of this movie is something that people are talking about. So it's like, it's going somewhere, but I don't know where it's going, and it was pretty tense.
It's. And you mentioned it, like, is she seeing the apples falling in slow motion, or is it just a normal thing? A big, I would say, an intentional thing with this movie, but also kind of a problem with this movie, is a lack of clarity about what parts of this are her experience or not. Like, how much of this is our experience as the viewer and how much of it is actually her experiencing these things. It's unclear. I think it is intentional, but it is troubling to contend with.
I agree. It's weird because this is one of those stories that requires a viewer. In other words, like, you're part of what's happening in a way, and some movies do that on purpose, like Funny Games, which we should cover, the original, because that's fucking great film. And talking, really breaks the fourth wall, but it breaks the fourth wall by implicating you in the role of observing violence in film, and what does that mean, and what does that say about us, and all that kind of stuff. This movie it's different, but it does kind of bring the viewer in that it's almost like the story doesn't happen unless there's someone there to see it. Because it operates like a fable, I mean, there's things that happen that are just impossible. Basically, the whole movie is impossible. I mean, it follows kind of logically in a way, but it's so unrealistic and it's so unlike anything that anybody ever has experienced that you have to imagine, like, okay, is it being presented as like an allegory? Or, like, the whole thing? Because it doesn't give me, personally, that is she just imagining it vibe. Because there's no flip side to the imagining it. There's no, like, straight take on what she's seeing. I guess there is. Like, all the different male characters aren't really the same character. But then when the end happens, it's like, no. Okay, no. This is bad shit. So, I mean, it's got to be some sort of an allegory or some sort of a fable. So, if you're thinking of it in those terms, it's like he's telling a story, obviously, about men, but he's telling a story about all these different things tied together to you, the viewer. Like, so you're part of I don't know, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it is, even your final conclusion there, I don't know, you know what I mean? That is very, like, the same place that I landed on this, is like, I don't have a full idea of what I need to say, but I know it's there. I just don't know all of its shape. Right. Which, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I think it was intentional, like you had said. I agree. I think it was intentional. I mean, that is you've also said this before in one of the previous episodes, that it's a cheap way to cover incompetence as a director. But I don't think that's what's happening here.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's an incompetent vagary. I think it is very purposeful. I think he's getting at something. I don't know if it's... I think there's a difference between incompetent and unsuccessful, and I think that this movie is mostly successful, but I don't think it is necessarily all the way successful in getting those things across the way that he wanted to.
Yeah, whenever you're whenever you're dealing in vagaries, and you're trying to tell a story, you're forcing the person who's reading the story or watching the movie or whatever to have their own interpretation. That's the intent, but you're also opening the door for misinterpretation and, allowing, for people to really get off track, and if you have, it's almost like you're trusting your audience, which no creative person should ever trust their fucking audience. That's especially not Alex Garland, who seems like a pretty cynical dude. I mean, he's pretty misanthropic as far as I can tell, but he gleefully tells stories about it, and he's a writer first, so he understands the mechanics of storytelling and if I don't include this is the effect it's going to have on a reader, because he spent his entire fucking business career thinking of these kinds of things. So you would imagine that he probably understands how to tell a story. So I'll give him credit for not being too stupid to come up with an idea that makes sense.
Yeah. And I love the fact that he's going after these. He's telling these stories that aren't just following the same story beats as everything else. He's experimenting, and he's telling stories in new perspectives, and it's really good. Even this movie, even in the things that aren't maybe 100% successful, he's doing very interesting things, and he's discussing big topics, but he's not trying to make like one giant thesis that covers the whole thing. He's pinpointing these little aspects of a much larger topic and illuminating these little like small areas of it, and that's great, but it is at times frustrating.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we think about some of the movies we've covered. I mean, we've got, how many episodes out right now? 33, I think?
Yeah.
So we've got 33 episodes out. That's, 33 different movies. Some of them are, are decades old, and the storytelling is primitive at best, even ones that have some fairly serious subject matter. Not like, you don't have to be literary or heady or elevated or any of those things to get serious points across, as anyone who watches horror movies knows. A pretty schlocky movie can have some interesting ideas in it. But in this case, he is all of those other things. But it works, I mean, it is effective, but I can understand where, I guess, the critique maybe from, it's not for a mass audience for a number of reasons. But one of the reasons is maybe some people see it as a little twee. Like, it's just a little, maybe just like, it's like a little artsy, but for me it works, so I'm okay with it. But I don't think I would necessarily want to argue too vehemently against somebody who saw it that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It is definitely a college professor recommendation, not as much your buddy recommendation.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. And like you said, this is moving into the final act. So we've got all of these like strange things are now happening to her. She is besieged at her Airbnb basically, and at this point, she's locked herself in, and now things are coming at the windows. The floodlights that illuminate the lawn are like flickering and stuff, and then something crashes through the window, and she's got a knife, and she's mad, and then someone's trying to get in through the front door, and then they do get in through the front door, but it's okay, it's just Jeffrey. And so he says that he heard screaming, and then the movie like calms back down again, it mellows out, and she's, like telling him what she experienced, and he's like, all right, and he gets all like puffy chested, and he goes into the kitchen where the window broke, but it turned out that it was just a random crow that came in through the window. So he's like picks it up and he's cooing at it, oh poor girl, and tells her not to look, and then cracks its neck to put it out of its misery, and is talking about that, not taking her complaint seriously, saying about these things, and then finally it like gets through, like she gets her point across that there were people trying to get in. And then he goes on this weird little thing. You have all the qualities of a failed military man. And he, like, says that, like, while making strong eye contact with her. And she's like, again, what? And then he's like, that's what my father used to tell to me. and so he is then going to go be brave outside of the house as if to prove his father wrong.
He's the neutered inadequate male. There's all these different, all these different, what's the word? The Jung, archetypes. Jungian archetypes.
Yep. So he's going to go outside and be brave and masculine as if to prove his father wrong, even though his father is probably long dead.
And he was probably right.
Yeah, probably. And so now he's projecting his own historical, psychological issues onto her very real and present issue. So he goes outside and says puffy, fluffery things about, oh, no, if you aren't, I'll take exception to you. And then, of course, the lights flicker again. And now Jeffrey has been, is now replaced with the nude guy again, and he is now more fully full of leaves. He's cut all kinds of slits into his body, and there are just leaves shoved in everything. There are like thorns sticking out of his shoulders and arms, and he has a handful of dandelion tufty pods, and he opens his hand up and he blows them into Harper's face. And then it's this kind of like whenever it went into the deer corpse earlier, we get another rehashing of the imagery and the Sheila Nagig and the Green Man with like the light going over it like a sun going over the earth and causing the shadows and more. And I think this is where it shows a scene of her underwater, and she's like screaming horribly, like huge mouthed, and there aren't even bubbles coming out, and she's just like staring at the camera through this like kind of amber colored water that she's underneath.
It's pretty intense.
Yeah. They're like, all right, we'll do this one. It'll be good for the trailer. At this point, like she comes to from that and goes back inside. She's got the knife, and this is where the someone's trying to get in again, probably this Green Man character, and he sticks his arm in through the mail hole, and she shoves the knife through his forearm right between those two good bones, and like not just in, but all the way through. So now, like, the mail slit is horizontal, and the blade is going in vertical, and it's fully crossed it, so he like pulls his arm, and it won't, go out because the blade is stuck through it, and the sharp edge is facing inward toward her. So, of course, then what happens is the slow pulling of the arm through the mail slot, and in order to achieve this, the blade has to just keep cutting forward through the forearm, through all of the wrist and all of the bones, and then out between the middle and ring fingers until finally the hand is all the way through, the knife clatters to the floor, and the bifurcated arm is now loose and somewhere outside of the house. Fuck.
It's a genius idea. It's so demented and perfect. I don't know what the fuck it means, but it is amazing. I mean, it's just a great tie-in, obviously, to James's injury, but it's just like, is it like a stigmata thing? Like, what the fuck is that? But also, what is the deal with the dandelion seeds? Are they like spores of some sort? Is she being intoxicated with the natural world or something, because she's inhaling that, not really them, but she's inhaling them. They're hazing around her, and she gets kind of like all kind of weird, and then she goes into the house. She's still kind of in a daze, and what snaps her out of it is Green Man sticks his hand through, and his disgusting, like, filthy hand with the claws on it is, like, reaching out, and she's still in so much of a daze that she takes his hand. And then he starts...
That's right, she, like, reaches
Yeah, and then he starts pulling on it, and that's when she snaps out of it and just ka-chunk with the knife, you know? But it was like... she was in some sort of a trance, you know, from the dandelion things. It means something, but I'm not sure what.
Like a hallucinogenic state, I think. I feel like what it's representing is the self-replicating nature of the horrible parts of male culture. Like, toxic masculinity isn't saying that being male is toxic. It's talking about the specific aspects of culture that males impart onto the other males. Like it's a thing that fathers hand down to children. It's a thing that children enforce in one another, you know, like I think that's what it's supposed to represent, and it's supposed to represent the fact that it is a replicating cycle where men keep reproducing these horrible behaviors amongst themselves, and that at least one of the primary victims of that is women, and that it's literally something that they can't get away from, and that it is something that is pervasive, but also it's like something that you have to almost try to ignore and just incorporate into your daily life. Like, all of these horrible men, like, she's not encountering all of these horrible men and immediately assuming that they are going to be horrible and toxic. She's giving all of them the benefit of the doubt, and they're each horribly toxic towards her in unique ways. And it's, you know, I think that's what's going on, but I don't know for certain.
No, yeah, same. I mean, it's like it reminds me, like, of times where I've thought about, you know, where I've gotten into arguments with women I was dating or, you know, married to or whatever, where, you know, where I'm being accused of or being lumped in with all the horrible things that men have done to them, which is an endless list. And something I do that might be less than wonderful, maybe, you know, not as horrible as, you know, some of the stuff that men are capable of, but still, you know, things that can be attributed to me being male. And it's like, my argument is always, you know, look, if I'm being a shit, it's because I'm being a shit. It's not because I'm a man. But then I think about it afterwards when I'm done being defensive, and it's like, well, how much of that is acculturation? Like, how much of that, because it's literally everywhere. You know, I mean, I guarantee you when I go back to work tomorrow, you know, some dude is going to say something really fucking stupid just because he's a dude, and that's just something that's expected of men. So it's like, well, I'm basically doing the same thing that these women are doing to me. Like, I'm attributing this cultural trait that's just been handed down like some horrible fucking disease, you know? And then women they play this bizarre role in that, in that none of this works unless you have the woman there to be the victim of this idiocy. And that's what this movie's all about. And each one of these characters that Rory plays, at least the primary ones, are different facets of that kind of stupid masculinity. And I read this one article that was really good that talks about their take on it is that each character is an expression, like a manifestation of one of the differing negative masculine qualities of James. So there's the petulant child who wants to blame her for everything, or you know, who just gets argumentative and angry. And that's his way of dealing with it. There's the vicar who is the one who's, you know, trying to like place guilt on her. There's these different characters that have these different. I don't know if I necessarily agree, but it's an interesting take.
Yeah. I could definitely see that being there. I don't think that Alex Garland would have written all of these characters just like, oh yeah, it's just some dudes. You know, I definitely think that they're supposed to represent things. That's why you've got. But then again, it also could be like just literally the different positions in which men have authority.
Yeah.
You know, there's, James has authority in the home. You've got a police officer, an incompetent police officer. You've got a religious figure. You've got people that work at establishments. And even in the very place that you're trying to go to get away from this horrible toxicity, there's also a guy there. Or you're just going on a nice stroll and you're randomly going to run into a guy while having a personally healthful and healing moment. Or you're going to go on a stroll to get away from stuff and there's going to be a horrible little boy. The last place you'd expect it, but there it is too.
It's like she's a walking magnet for this stuff, literally, in the film. I mean, anywhere she goes, she draws this horrible energy towards her because it's kind of fun to like wonder how would that work? Does this place actually exist? Are these people real? Do they only behave this way when a woman comes into their environment? I mean, it's really crazy the way it's presented, very dreamlike, kind of. I don't know.
And we're coming up on a point where, like, she's even accused of drawing this energy towards herself, and I think really what's supposed to be happening is, like, I think part of what Alex Garland is going for is that this is part of the female experience of it feels like you're drawing all of this to you, but it's just because you're there and a man decides that you are this thing, then it's time for that energy to go towards you, whether or not you're putting out anything. I also think that, like, part of this movie is projection of Alex Garland's own psychology on the issue, which is going to be unique and from a certain perspective, which I get and fully appreciate, and I think that's part of why I am the right audience for this movie, is because, like, I think what he's projecting is a specific kind of anxiety. Like, I think this movie is a projection of Alex Garland's anxiety about being a male in a culture that has recently way more widespread and mainstreamedly we're at the very beginning of coming to terms with the pervasiveness of toxic masculine cultural norms and being part of that. Like, I think what's going on is we're seeing Alex Garland coming to exploring the idea of exhibiting toxic masculine behaviors.
Yeah, I mean, and probably part of that questioning is, like, is it something is there anything I can even really do about it? Like, it's built into me, but at the same time, I don't like it. I don't want this to be a part of me, but it just is, so it's like, what the fuck? Because that's it. That is part of where that anxiety comes from, It's like, we are guys, and it's, but which also brings up the question, like, it's what makes this movie kind of strange is that, we're dealing with all of this stuff, and of course, in order for a film to go this deep into a subject like this, it has to be made by a dude.
It has to be made by a dude, and like, it's not a movie about the female experience. Like, the movie is it's like with Robert Frost. He's got the poem "The Road Not Taken," where when you read it, it feels like it's a poem about taking the road less traveled, but then when you look at the title again, it's him obsessing about the road that he didn't take. This movie feels like it could be a movie about the female experience of toxic masculinity, but you look at the title, no, this movie is about men, and we just needed a female character at the center to have all of this horrible energy directed towards. Like, it's not about her. Like, this movie is really about men. It's directed, like, it's a good movie to have directed by men. I know that's one of the criticisms of you should have had a female direct this movie about the female experience of male toxicity, but it's not that. It's literally a movie about men's stuff and the replication of that toxic masculinity. I think, anyway. I could be wrong. I could be an asshole.
No, I think you're right. I mean, it's a very male way of looking at that kind of thing. And I mean, even to the point of, like, grotesque special effects and things. I mean, we talked about Saint Maud recently where, she shies away from that kind of, there's some effects in it, but it's, she doesn't need to use that kind of stuff to tell the kind of story that she's telling, which was a very female point of view. It wasn't necessarily, like, as we said, it wasn't about men. Whereas, like, this one is very clearly about, like you said, about male behavior, and it would be a totally different movie if a woman made it, because why the hell would she make it from that perspective? It's not insultingly male. It's not like it's not like it's preachy or, trying to, I don't think that it makes women look bad in any way, even inadvertently.
Nope.
I know that he definitely had consulted with her directly for, like, some of, like, the dialogue for the scenes where she's interacting with, James in particular. He wanted, kind of, how would you react if you were in this situation? What kind of things would you say, or what? So he wasn't. It's not like he was shutting out a female perspective, but. Having said that, it's a story about, like you said, it's a story about men.
Yeah.
Like, being dumb fucks.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, like, I experience, in a, we're now in a post-Me Too society. I experience anxiety about, like, at what points have I been a total piece of shit, I'm sure I have. I am part of this culture. I'm sure I have, and it's made me, like, more aware of my interactions, like, especially at work.
Mm-hmm.
Like, like, what are things that I could be saying that I think are normal that are totally creepy towards, women. It's a hard thing to, like, just be fully self-aware about, because if it's a thing that you think is normal, it's hard for it to stand out as, horrible. So yeah, it's a whole thing. It's it's interesting. It's part of what makes this such a good movie, is it pulling in that little point of things.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess we should go back to the movie. At this point, she's backed away from the door, and now we're hearing this horrible repetitive scratching noise, like the and it's very repetitive and mechanical, and what it is the dead crow is now basically like some sort of animatronic crow that's doing this same back and forth motion over and over again, real dumb looking. And the Marilyn Monroe mask from earlier has been placed over the crow, so what we're hearing is the edge of that hard plastic mask scraping back and forth over the countertop or floor or whatever. And the reason that mask is there is because the little boy from earlier, Samuel, is there in all of his tiny, like, Rory Kinnear-faced weirdness. And he's still got his stupid little tie all done, fucking punch him in the face style.
His cravat.
Yeah. And he's there, and he says, "Look at what you did to me," and he holds up his arm, and his arm is bifurcated like the one that was stuck through the thing. And they don't shy away from the inside of it. You see, like, all of the, like, musculature and fat and veins and stuff, but it's not, like, dripping, it's not bleeding, it's not dry, it's just shiny. So you're seeing, like, once it's done bleeding, just, like, the shiny inside of there-ness. And he's got his, like, sleeve down to a certain point, so it's, like, kind of holding things together a little bit, so it gapes apart, but not, like, all the way, like, falling down at a 90-degree angle. It's just kind of, like, floppy up and down and real gross. And he wants to play hide and seek, and she's not having a good time with it. And then he says that, like, you should probably, like, she's like, "I'll fucking stab you." And he's like, oh yeah, and like comes up to her and she's like holding the knife to him, but she can't stab him because he's a little boy. And then he's like, oh, well, you probably should have killed me. And then she like runs away and he's like, oh, good, hide and seek. So she goes and she hides in what kind of looks like a very nice public restroom, but I guess it's just a bathroom when you live in a castle or an estate or something.
Yeah, it's like the size of my living room.
Yeah. And then I think one of the other Rory Kinnear incarnations like chases her into there, I feel like, and then she's locked in there, but then...
Yeah, I think it's another one of the pub guys, right?
Yeah.
He chases her up the stairs.
Anyway, so she's in the bathroom now, and then all of a sudden the vicar makes his way in, and he's also got the split arm thing, and now he's quoting Homer to her, which is, that's normal.
That's Yeats. That's Yeats.
Is it Yeats?
Yeah, it's from Leda and the Swan.
Oh, that makes sense, because there is a very Yeatsy moment coming up later. Okay, I thought because of who he was talking about, I thought he was quoting Homer. That's nice. That's good.
Yeah, he quotes Yeats, and then he quotes another guy later in the second little bit. Is it Samuelson? I forget what the guy's name is. It's
that would make
another
sense.
poet, but yeah.
And he's got he's quoting all of this stuff. Yeah, Leda and the Swan. That totally that makes way more sense. Wow. I didn't know. I read it somewhere. I wouldn't have picked up on it. Okay, yeah. I had just assumed because of the stuff, but yeah, like Leda and the Swan is a perfect poem to include in here.
I figured you would know it.
Yeah. It's it's when Zeus became a swan so he could rape Leda.
Yep. Exactly.
So he comes at her and he's talking about how he's been thinking about her virginity ever since they talked and how old she was, and he's been imagining her with her legs open and her vagina open and she's talking about her slit, and she like points the knife at him and he's like, that's right, that's what it is, it's just the tip of the knife, and it's like, ugh. And then he sexually assaults her. And part of it is he takes the arm that's cut half lengthwise and holds her around the neck with it, so that like half of his hand is on one side of her neck and half of his hand is on the other side of her neck, and it's just so
it's like a hand fork. It's disgusting. It's so horrible. Just He also quotes the other thing that he quotes is a poem called Ulysses from a guy named Samuel Daniels.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Which is touching on when Odysseus is returning from the Trojan War, or Ulysses for the Romans.
Yeah.
He sees these sirens, and the sirens sing to him. So remember, he tells her, she's singing to him or something like that. But in the poem, he has this. He's like he's struggling with himself. Does he want to give in and let the siren take him away, or does he want to do his own thing and tell the siren to go pound rocks? And like basically what I had read was that it's like it basically presents women as a form of beauty that we either destroy or be destroyed by, which is a very male interpretation of. Yeah. It's like, dude, okay. Why do you have to weaponize it?
Either way, it's their fault.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what all that shit is. That vicar is a bad man.
Yeah, he is a bad, poetically literate man, and he begins
with a really gross hand.
Yeah, and lips. Really gross lips, too.
Yes.
And just one of the many terrible haircuts in this movie.
Oh, man.
So he's quoting all of these poems. Before he assaults her, she asks, "What the fuck are you?" And that's when he starts talking about her virginity and stuff. And he tells her that He says, I have decided that you are an expert in carnality, where, like, that's the thing. And he talks about how, he's been thinking about her body and when the first time that she had sex, and that is all her fault, that she has this power to do this to him, and so now he's going to assault her sexually because of her, and it's because of the like, powerfulness of her bodily femaleness that he is doing this, thus her fault, not his fault. It's so good.
Yeah.
And so she stabs the fuck out of him.
Yes, she does. It's great. In this, like, great reversal of penetration.
Yeah.
It's just like, she just, like, slides it, and he moans, like, in painful ecstasy. It's disgusting.
Oh, amazing.
I was just like, oh man, chef's kiss there. That split hand thing on the, it's so disgusting.
On either side of her neck.
It's great. It's quite a shot. It looks so good it had to be CGI. It can't possibly be a practical effect. It just looks too good.
Yeah, man, if it's a prop, I want one.
Just flopping around.
It won't fall all the way off, but it's just not hanging together.
It's just a little spring effect on the bottom. Oh, it's so gross.
Thank you, Alex.
Yes. So after she stabs the vicar incarnation of whatever the hell's going on, she runs out of the house. We hear the opening song chord kind of coming back in. The pleasant, lovely guitar sounds, and then we hear the as she's driving off in her car to get the fuck out of there. She's like, fuck this, and she's taking off, she's driving away in the dark, completely annihilates Jeffrey standing in the middle of the road. It's like, I don't know how he survived that, but she just waylays him. And then
he's obliterated.
She's like sitting there in shock in the car. He gets up, drags her out of the car, and goes, Miss Marlowe? Mrs. Marlowe! Turns out he's a real prick.
Yeah.
So he gets in the car and drives away, speeds off into the distance, and we hear this, like, real low, moany chanting, like, really weird. She looks up, and she's looking at the Milky Way above her in this beautiful shot. And then as this is happening, he comes speeding back, like we see the headlights coming around the bend, and she takes off. It's like, Hitchcock movie or something where, what is it, North by Northwest, where Cary Grant is being chased by the plane. So
yeah,
he comes around and they show him in the car and he's like, ah! That was horrible.
Gonna get her.
It's horrendous. So he chases her. She runs into the courtyard and runs right through this little entrance gate, and the car just slams into what I think you put was it's like the world's strongest light post.
Yeah.
It's like, how did it completely not just stop the car, but destroy the car?
Yeah, it's just this rock and mortar. It looks like it's maybe like it's not waist high.
No.
It's just like, and it's got a little light on the top of it. I guess not gas. It must be electric, but it is just firmly in the ground, and I guess British cars aren't capable of standing up to that because the car stops dead and is now just blown up into pieces, whereas that little rock thing is just fine.
It's perfectly fine. That thing is good to go.
Yeah. Good British home construction, not so much on the cars.
So the car crashes, and we see her. She turns around, she's looking in that, like, through the hedge that she's just run through right beyond where the car crashes. There's all this smoke, steam or whatever coming off the car.
The headlights are backlighting that entry.
So it's the real bright cloud of steam and stuff. And then we hear someone come through, and instead of Jeffrey stepping through, it's the Green Man, basically, the naked guy in full Green Man face. Like, the face is Green Man. His tongue is even green, which was disgusting. And then he's got, like, sticks growing out of his shoulders, and, he's still got a semi-human body, but the face is full Green Man.
He's been like spray painted like a cake on the face.
Yeah, it's a well decorated cake, I have to say.
Yeah, I'd eat that cake.
It's a lion.
Rory Kinake.
Whoa, Rory Kinake. Nice. So now we've got the full on naked green man, and she's I can only imagine what state she's in at this point. Eventually she just gets exhausted. Like, she doesn't even seem surprised anymore. It's great.
Yeah, at a certain point she's just standing there like,
She's just like, all right, whatever. So he
oh, you're gonna do it again? Okay, here we go.
So he starts stepping towards her. His ankle snaps, and which is disgusting. And then we realize that he's mega pregnant, like super pregnant. Yeah. And he's like, and he falls to the ground on his back. He rolls up and lifts his legs up, and as I put it, gooch births Samuel. His gooch.
I'm so glad that you have to describe all of this.
I know, it's like, oh my god. So he lays.
Folks, this is the key moment in the movie. Like, this is the thing that you have to pay attention to. Everything has been building up to this little session of delight.
He's pregnant. A complete flip around of the whole, fertility business and all that. Like the worst possible expression of the Green Man and Sheila Nagig, and the roles flipped. So he lays on his back and horribly gooch births Samuel, which slides out of his gooch-gina, and it's horrendous. And we're just getting started.
Oh, yeah.
So Samuel comes out, he stands up, he's like, he's super pregnant with this big distended belly, and then his navel turns into a vagina and births the vicar, who slimes out of his belly onto the floor. Samuel falls dead on the ground. The vicar like crawls across the yard, births Slinkies across the yard, all shiny and bloody and disgusting. His hair's all like stuck to his head. She's backing away. He crawls into the house, and they're in the entranceway there, and then he's pregnant, of course, and then he gets down kind of like his, on his hands and knees with his head down, and then his spine between his shoulders starts vag birthing, and out of his spine comes, it was James, I think, right? Are we at James at that point yet? No, it's Jeffrey. That's right, it's Jeffrey, dear God. Jeffrey comes out all toothy. He's in the entranceway. He's slipping in the blood, and
it's lots of good the bones pop the bones popping out under the skin, and you seeing the shape of something trying to push its way out of his back. It's so good.
It's amazing. It's really amazing and disgusting. So he's slipping around in the mess, and he Jesus Christ. He stands up. He stands up and he's all and then he cranks his head back and starts mouth birthing feet that are coming out of feet at weird angle with one broken cranked up ankle out of his mouth. He mouth births James for the ultimate. And she grabs the axe from the fireplace. So now she's got the axe. So he mouth bursts James, and James cuts out, and then just gets up, sits on the couch, and she sits next to him with an axe in her hand, and he starts Jamesing her, basically, gaslighting, giving her the business again.
He just wants to be loved.
Yeah, but more toned down, and just kind of, this is what you did. And she says, what is it that you want from me? And he says, your love.
Yeah.
Which is all of this was for her love. So she says, she just kind of sits there and goes, yeah. It's so dismissive. I love it. She's just yeah. And then you see her kind of flipping her thumb across the axe blade, and then it goes black, and the word men goes across the screen real big. Boom, men. And then it cuts back, and we see the next day Riley drives into the courtyard area. We hear the theme song playing. She gets out, goes into the entryway to the house, sees all the blood stains, the drag marks, and then
we even see the car that's crashed into the light post, and Harper is soaked in blood, in all the places that she had blood on her before.
She's sitting on this little stairway out in the garden. Riley sees her and goes over, and she looks at her. She sees all the blood on her, and she sees Harper smiling and covered in blood and she's smiling at a leaf in her hand, basically. So what I had read was, and actually this makes sense, that she probably killed James with that axe and put an end to it. And then in the end, she has now... Oh, and then we see that Riley is pregnant.
Yeah.
And that's basically the end of the movie. But, the end of the movie is her holding the leaf. Right before that, we see that Riley's pregnant. And so the take that I had read, again, which I really liked, was that this bastardization of creation, which had been reclaimed by this weird nature culty environment that she found herself in, where men were taking responsibility for creation. We're the ones who are responsible for all of this. You're just a vessel, I guess, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And, the tables have been flipped back now. Riley is there. She's pregnant. Harper has destroyed whatever the fuck that malevolent thing was. And the rightful role of fertility and all that stuff has been given back to the women. That's kind of this take that I had read, which I thought was pretty interesting. I don't know, but I like the ending. I like that she wins. Whatever the fuck happened, she conquered it. And movie's over. We see the dandelion bits floating around behind the credit scene, and eventually they form into a ball. Did you see that?
I didn't.
They coalesce into a ball shape, and I was like, is that supposed to be an egg? Like a fertilized egg or something? I don't know what it was. I don't know. And then we hear that love song again, which supposedly is Elton John. Doesn't sound like him. And again, I read that. I had no idea. And that's the movie.
Yeah. Men over.
Men done.
What a fucking trip.
Yeah, that ending is, that packs a punch.
Yeah. Yeah, I read that he was trying to figure out what to do with the transformation, and he got the idea, he didn't like any of the stuff he'd come up with, and then he watched, have you seen Attack on Titan?
No, I have not. Oh, that's right, there is something like that in there, isn't there?
Yeah, you should watch the first episode of Attack on Titan, then you could be done with it. But the first episode of it is glorious, and he was watching this show. I think he said his kid was watching it, and he was like, "Oh, that's really neat." And that's a lot of with Attack on Titan, all of a sudden there will be a giant, horrible, just really a loathsome human, but gigantic. And then it turns out that the actual person is living inside the nape of the neck and controlling it. And you can cut them out. If you cut open the nape of the neck, you can yoink them out of there.
Nice. And that's where he got that idea from?
Apparently, yeah.
Wow. That's quite a take on that.
He did a really cool thing with it.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great way to end a movie.
Yes. Yeah.
Just in case you didn't think it was a horror film, it certainly takes you in that direction there. I mean, it's got a lot of horror tropes, the lady stuck in the house, or trapped, being stalked in the house, home invasion, a lot of that kind of stuff, but, has some weird, stalkery, slashery feel elements to it, although without the slashing, and a bunch of other weirdness. But yeah, that's that whole bit at the end is fantastic.
Yeah, it is. It is really good. Yeah, it's imagine if at the end Jason Voorhees would not stop giving birth to himself out of a variety of holes. which
I had read was this masculine figure or this embodiment of toxic masculinity basically making a mockery of birth, like saying, well, I'll get birth out of here. I'll get birth. It doesn't even fucking matter. Like,
yeah, I can give birth out of anything.
It's like, yeah, okay, whatever. It doesn't look like you're having a good time.
No. Oh man, that scene, like the after the first birth where it's Samuel and he's just like kneeling and just yelling, crying at her as his stomach is getting more pregnant. That was like, oh no.
It's like this, I don't know, man. It was like this weird chain of things happening so quickly, and you're just like getting steamrolled with all this crazy shit. But it has this bizarre like you're reading a chapter in the Bible feel to it. Like, it just has this weird, like the symbolism is so dense that it's just coming at you too fast. You just have to kind of let it happen, and then you'll have to deal with it later. You know, it's like, we're going to have to sort this out later. But for right now, what the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's definitely going for that. He's going for, like, the idea of this being the really big, huge, fundamental elements. That's why we've got Greek imagery, we've got biblical imagery, we've got old pagan imagery, like with these universal deities. And also, I would like to read the last two lines from the poem "The Second Coming" from William Butler Yeats, which is, "And what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born."
Oh.
It's like that whole sequence of the birth slinky of like going down the stairs as one thing births to the next, I think is very that rough beast slouching toward Bethlehem to be born. With, of course, Bethlehem being Harper.
I'm actually familiar with that. That's great. That is a great connection. I didn't even think about that. That's wonderful. I always love that line.
It makes more sense that he quoted Yeats earlier in the movie.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, it's very, like, I always struggled with that poem, like, what does it mean to slouch towards Bethlehem? And now I have one vision that will always come up in my brain.
Yeah, that's right. It's what was the Joan Didion book, Slouching Towards Gomorrah, I think it was called?
Oh, God, I don't know. That sounds right.
I was like, wow, that's a really cool title, but then I realized where she got that from, and I'm like, oh, that's way cooler.
Yeah, I wonder what they'll do in Gomorrah instead. And, of course, like, I like the, he talks about, so in the same scene where she mentions that her name is Marlowe, is the same scene where he mentions Shakespeare, which is, there's this whole theory that Christopher Marlowe was secretly the person writing the works that Shakespeare put out under his name. And so that plays into the whole masculinity culture, self-replicating, and who is even credited or to blame and stuff like that. He's hitting all the notes. He's got Yeats, Odysseus, Shakespeare, and Marlowe. Like, he's not going for the small fries. We've got, like Adam in the Garden of Eden. We've got, it's so fucking good.
Zeus, Agamemnon, Helen. It goes on and on. It's ridiculous. Helen of Troy and the whole Trojan fucking war. It's like, okay, sure, why not? It's funny because,
and then of course.
Well, I was going to say it's funny because like literature has a long history. Film doesn't, and so it's really hard for film to create high art because it doesn't have this classical history to draw from. And so it's hard to tell something in a higher form of artistic, quality because film is just not associated with that. And so it either just looks pretentious or impenetrable or both or just bad. Like, so it's a hard thing to kind of draw that shit in. So I imagine as an author who obviously thinks of himself as a pretty good author, it's got to be difficult to try to, it's like, how am I going to get these ideas into this movie without it just turning off everybody? Like, it's got to be watchable. I know what I'll do. I'll have multiple new vag birth from dude to dude while I'm shoveling this weirdness out.
Yeah. Yeah, even that part of the story where he's talking about the fact that he was trying these different things and none of them were working, I appreciate that, because he's, like, being creative, but he just... everything that he's coming up with wasn't working according to him, and, like, he's like, yeah, but this is what we could do, but it sucks, and, like, I super appreciate that struggle, and the fact that he's willing to, like, admit that. He was like, yeah, all of the stuff I was coming up with was dumb, and then I watched this cartoon, and I was like, oh, that's brilliant. I'll do that.
That's fantastic. I love that he didn't know what he was going to do, and that's, like, the whole fucking centerpiece of the movie. I mean, the movie for me is really entertaining. It was just, I liked the way it flowed and the visuals and all that kind of stuff. But then that last piece is it's just one of those things that you see in a movie that you can't forget, you know. And you hear that a lot, and maybe it's true, but it's really hard to just walk past that, what you just witnessed in the last 20 minutes or whatever. It's like, oh, okay, wow, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Leaving the movie theater from watching that, you're probably not going to be talking about all of that symbolism. Probably the first thing you'll be talking about is like, so... all those births, huh?
Imagine that on the big screen. Damn, that would have been something else.
Yeah.
Did you see the movie Mother?
Oh, fuck yes. Yeah, this movie has big mother energy.
Yeah. Big mother energy. It does.
Yeah. Those, because it's also it's not messing around with like small fries. It's like dealing with these big elemental things and this otherworldly horror. We should do Mother too. That movie's so fucking good. Even Melanie, who hates horror movies, loves that movie, and also has a very hard time rewatching it.
It's a tough watch. I mean, it's got some rough moments for sure.
Ooh, one particularly just, oh my god. Oh, we are all doomed.
It is really good though. Is that an Aronofsky film?
I believe that is Aronofsky, or perhaps the other one that I always confuse with Aronofsky.
Maybe not, because Aronofsky made Noah, and that movie fucking blows my nards. That movie sucks so bad.
But it looks just like you.
Yeah, it does look just like me. But that movie fucking sucks. It's so bad. It is terrible.
Let's see. Aronofsky did...
He did Pi, he did Noah, he did...
he did Noah, he did Mother, he did Black Swan, The Wrestler, The Fountain, Requiem for a Dream.
Yeah, he did The Fountain.
Yeah. What's the one? He's the guy that I always get him mixed up with is...
It's not Philip Michael Thomas, is it? One of those?
No.
Thomas Banana Penis?
Nicole Kidman movie, something... Oh, Dogville. That's the movie's called Dogville. Oh,
you're thinking of Von Trier, but it's not a Von Trier film.
Yeah, Lars von Trier. I get Darren Aronofsky and Lars von Trier mixed up.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah, why not?
I'm sure they would love to hear that.
It's Aronofsky. Yeah, Aronofsky made it.
Which one?
Mother.
Yeah, yes, he made Mother. Okay. Yeah. Your Mother. Yeah.
Man, oh man.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, I also wanted to point out, like, so there's even all of the big, heavy element things in there. The simple one of the apple not falling far from the tree imagery is great, and I love that whenever he was talking about it, Jeffrey was like, if they fall to the ground and then you end up with a house full of wasps. I thought that was funny because you've got white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, and it's like, that's a good joke. Solid joke there.
A whole town full of wasps. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah. That was really good. I mean, this movie could have easily gone south. I mean, how many times do you start, like, I was just thinking, it reminds me of like when somebody says, some movie comes out and it looks like it would be interesting, but then you start hearing everybody's like, dude, it's fucking terrible. And then you watch it anyway because you want to see for yourself. And maybe like the first half is great or whatever. So you're like, I knew this movie wasn't going to be bad. And then you're like, but everybody says it's terrible. So something must take a turn. And then it takes that fucking turn and you're just like, how did you go so far off the fucking rails Like, you had something good going, and then you just took a shit on your own project. But this movie doesn't do that. Like, it starts cool, it's fun to watch, and it remains, like, certainly is fun to watch at the end. I mean, it just, even if it makes no fucking sense at all, it's fun to watch.
Yeah. I mean, fuck, yeah, it's great. Like, I mean, I talked earlier about it not being completely successful, and whenever I say it's not completely successful, I am, like, nitpicking on, like, little things that could be done better, maybe something that could be clearer or whatever, or just, like, stylistically different, but yeah, overall, it just is firing on all cylinders. Like, it especially at the end, it really, like, picks up speed, like some kind of Rory in a car, and goes for it. I did think the scene where she's just, like, standing there, I guess it even makes sense, but she's standing there and looking up at the Milky Way was a little much, but I guess it's part of his working with all of the big elemental things and her being a smallness in comparison to a bigness. Yeah. But it was also a little bit like, really? Okay, yeah. That's fine, I guess.
Yeah, I know. It kind of took me out for a second. I was like, all right, I'll accept that. I'll accept that answer.
Yeah. At this point, I want to give it my rating. I've already said all of the things. I don't want to go back over all of them because at this point it would just be obnoxious for me to say them again. But yeah, it's all of the points. Go back through it if you want to hear it. I gave this a 4.7 out of 5. It's just, it's not perfect. I think if this was an art film podcast, it would probably be perfect. Like, but because this is a horror movie podcast, I'm grading it as a horror movie. It's not quite perfect, but it is so close, and it is so good. And definitely watch it. Be open-minded, and don't be an asshole. It's 4.7 out of 5. Loathsome Things.
I love it. I'm basically in the same range. Like, I was struggling with all the stuff that we talked about as far as, like, in relation to how I wanted to rate it. You know, one of the things that, you know, like, I was like, I really just am inclined to give it a 5 because I just like it so much. But then I'm like, I can't just give all these new movies 5s based on my early impression of them because they may not age that well for me. And then I thought, you know, then there's this and that and all that. And ultimately I was like, you know what, who fucking cares? Our rating system is absolutely meaningless. It has no relevance in reality. So I just gave it a 5.
Yeah.
Like, fuck it. I love this movie. I've been critical of movies that I really love, and I've given them what would be kind of a medium, like, and I think that's fair. Like, those movies were probably not that great, but I just liked them. And so it's like, you use different criteria for different movies. I just had so much fun watching this every time. I got more out of it the more I watched it. That's always a good sign for me.
Yep.
You know, I can see I understand the criticisms. I think a lot of them are fair. You know, I could see how somebody would be willing to argue a different position, but man, I loved it, so whatever.
Yeah, I mean, he really swung for the fences with this one, and it's fucking great. Somebody
was like, he pitched this to someone. I don't know if he pitched that scene.
Obviously not.
How did somebody pay for that? Someone was like, and you need how many million? Oh yeah, let me just get my checkbook out. Because, talk about taking a gamble. I guess they figured Annihilation probably did better than they expected, but somebody gave them the money to make that.
Yeah.
Ex Machina probably cost because of the robot effects, but the rest of it was, just some house in the middle of nowhere, and the rest was just acting and stuff. So that part couldn't have been too expensive, but Annihilation had to be extremely expensive.
It is such a good movie, too.
Yeah. And then this one, I guess that's another one, though, where it's like, obviously there's CGI in the movie, but it's used well, and then there's, a lot of practical effects. But most of the movie isn't any of that. It's just good cinematography.
Alex Garland really likes a character being still in a scene that the character is contemplating. Like, any Alex Garland thing, someone's gonna be sitting or standing still and just really thinking about their surroundings.
Having a good think at your expense.
Like, but how do I feel about artificial intelligence in this very nice house?
You're like, I don't know, but I do know that I'll never live in a house like this, so let's just move forward with the story.
To fuck or not to fuck a robot.
Exactly. Oh my god.
So that makes this a 9.7 out of 10 Loathsome Things. That puts it in 4th place on our all-time list, just below Night of the Living Dead and just above Miike Takashi's Audition. That's a pretty good spot for this. I feel alright about that.
Not bad, yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely not better than Night of the Living Dead, but,
yeah.
I don't know, Audition's right there, though, but I guess that you could, on a different day, we might have, graded those different.
Yep, flipped them. I could see that. It also has some similarities to Audition, thematic and visual.
Yeah. That's
got
true.
That leg coming off, or that foot coming off. Oh, is this lady alone in a house? Nope. Not quite.
How hereditary of that scene.
And John, I have a question for you. In this movie, who would you say is the motherfucking asshole?
James.
James.
That's my motherfucking asshole, because it all centers around how much of a motherfucking asshole he is. Or is it just men in general?
Well, I think men is the easy answer, just given the title.
I guess I have to pick a character. So even though all those characters are probably all the same character, yeah, I don't know. James is a son of a bitch. I'm going to go with the vicar. Just to...
Yeah.
I think the vicar was the motherfucking asshole, because Samuel was just a kid. James was just a troubled mess of a human. Just a failed human. An asshole.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
The vicar was in a position of power, supposed to be a learned man, supposed to be a counselor, a healing person. He's none of those things. He's just a prick.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
I pretty much agree. I mean, James is more than just a failed human. Well, he was until he collapsed into a heap of gore. He was physically violent, emotionally abusive. I think they both count as the motherfucking asshole, although with James, he did a physical assault and years of abuse, whereas the vicar is super rapey and, probably not just to Harper. You've got a position like that. I mean, he's probably Church of England, he's instead of Catholic, but priests do horrible things. I think there's maybe more than one reason why Samuel was wearing a lady mask, a pretty lady mask.
Oh, man.
So, this movie, they're both the motherfucking asshole. I have a question, John. I feel like, other than trying to kill her with a car, what was the thing that made Jeffrey horrible? I mean, he tried to kill her with a car, but up until that point, we never really got a heel turn from him. He just finally had enough after she concussed him?
Well,
with an automobile?
That's why I those kind of things all play into my interpretation that the whole thing is supposed to be allegorical. He's not really an actual person. He's more of a representation of a kind of person, or a trait that we often see exhibited in men. Not necessarily the pastoral, hickish British country character, but more of the impotent, the guy who's just he's not very confident. He's kind of a bore, he's just kind of a doofus, and he obviously is not he obviously doesn't have any, even the remotest concept how to interact with women. He's just this doofus, this awkward idiot who's kind of foppish, and that's the way I kind of read him. I mean, he doesn't really So he doesn't necessarily turn towards being bad, but because he's just another facet of a specific type of identity, or not a specific type, but he's part of this amalgamation of masculine stupidity.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so I don't know. What do you think? Do you think he turns, or?
Well, I mean, he turns the car around, I guess, is like the actual turn of it. But yeah, I guess he was kind of like he was always kind of like snivelly and like single, or like judging her for stuff. So I think it was he was less of a like direct and more of like a microaggression facet of masculine toxicity, I guess.
Oh, for sure.
Makes more sense.
He's definitely passive aggressive for sure.
Yeah.
But I just like, before I even saw the movie and I realized from the trailer that Kinnear was playing all these different characters, I was trying to figure, like, in my mind, why would that be? And so, what I came up with was, well, they're probably all facets of the same thing, which, I mean, would be the obvious guess. It's like, I didn't think it was some demon that was possessing all these male characters, and, I just thought of it as they're all representative of something, symbolic of something. So it's not, it's being told to us, as if she's, experiencing all of this stuff, but it may not necessarily be a literal depiction of anything that she's experiencing. It's just a way of trying to portray this idea through film, basically, and make it an entertaining movie to watch at the same time. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
It's alright. It's hard to do that. It's hard to know what the fuck one is talking about when talking about this movie.
This movie is ripe for bloviation.
I'm gonna do a play called "What We Talk About When We Talk About Men." And it's just gonna be like, I don't know. It's just a bunch of dudes on stage like, I don't know. You wanna, I don't know. I guess go assault someone.
Yeah, I'm kind of bored. You wanna go assault somebody?
Yeah. No, you're gay.
Just 2.5 hours of that.
Yeah. Hey, sports, am I right?
You want to know how I know you're gay? You talk about men for 2.5 hours.
We never once commented on the size of his penis. That's how I know you're gay. Fascinating. All right, well, if you have another take on this movie than the one that we had, or if you, thought it sucked or thought we got it wrong, you can tweet or Insta us on those two platforms at Loathsome Pod, or you can reach out to us on Facebook, where I posted a fascinating photo, etching or sketch of a woman with tiny, tiny feet showing her vagina to a demon who is horrified by it. I love that. That is from a 1700s book of children's fables.
That's not problematic.
Woo! Or you can email us at loathsomethings@gmail.com. This will be, our episode will be dropping during the first weekend of Jordan Peele's Nope. So if you haven't seen it, go out and watch Nope, because it looks like it's gonna be really fucking good.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I'm pretty psyched. Thanks for listening, and I'm sorry you all have to die.